Okay, the next item is item number 5, application for a certificate of appropriateness at 447 Hudson Street in the Greenwich Village Historic District, docket number 16-0047, block 603, lot 72. A house built in 1826 and altered in the 20th century. This is an application to install storefront infill.
Good morning, Commissioners. Excuse me. My name is John Barboni. I am co-founder of Elemental Architecture, and I prepared the application that's before you today. So to walk you through the application here, we could begin with the Greenwich Village Historic District map, which you're familiar with, I'm sure. You can see that the subject property, 447 Hudson Street, is located right on the southwest perimeter border of the district. It's actually neighboring a manufacturing district that's next to it. This is a C16 commercial district that the property resides in on Hudson Street. Here we have the 1940 tax photo, which is pulled from the archives. The building itself was constructed according to the designation report in 1826 by George Sutton to be his own residence. So we're looking at something that was built right at the tail end of the federal style. And as we can see in the 1940 tax photo here, the storefront was modified likely around the turn of the century for commercial use. You can see that it was actually divided into two separate commercial storefronts. It appears that there's two entry doors that are located there, one behind the gentleman standing on the right, and the second is the white door on the left. The storefront windows wrapped the corner. You can see the cornice overhead, and what appears to be a brick bulkhead underneath, though difficult to say in this photo. As we move along to the 1980 tax photo, we can see that the storefront was again altered. According to the records, again, in the designation report, it says that it was altered for a real estate use prior to designation, so we can assume that this was done at some point prior to 1969, which was the date of the designation report. And all of the original historic building fabric was removed in the storefront with this alteration. The brick that you see there is a Roman infill brick, glass block windows, a large glass display window, and then some sort of a siding was installed where the cornice once existed overhead. This is the corner as we see it today. You can see that it very closely resembles what is evident in the 1980 tax photo. They've actually installed some vinyl shingles where the sideboard was once replacing the corner, so it's a piece of work. The rest of it, in terms of the size of the openings and the glazing, remains the same as it does in the 1980 photo. For context, these are two street panoramas. So on the top, you can see Hudson Street, the west side of Hudson Street, starting with the subject premise on the left-hand side and then looking north up Hudson Street corridor. And then on the bottom of the page, we see the east side of Hudson Street, again starting from the corner of Wharton Street and looking north on Hudson corridor. This is a photo showing the existing Hudson Street front elevation. And here we have the proposed. So in the proposed, what we've done is we've aimed to match the scale of what was evident in the 1940s storefront. So the heights of the bulkheads, the sizes of the display windows, the overhead transoms, the dimensions of the signboard and cornice overhead. We show the cornice returning at the Masonry Pier on the right, which is consistent with the federal style. And the entry is recessed, as was typical of the turn of the century commercial storefront modifications. This is another rendering with the awnings up, revealing the transoms behind. And then this is the Morton Street facade as it exists today, and the proposed rendering, again showing the storefront display windows wrapping the corner, the wood paneling, the colonnade, and the signboard, replacing also the window in the existing opening to the left of the storefront. For materials, we are showing examples here, many of which are photos of the work that was done under staff approval on the rear facade of the building. So all of the materials and the casement windows proposed for the front match the work that was done about 4 years ago on the rear facade. Starting in the top left corner, we have a blackened iron lantern. This was a photo of a lantern at 54 Morton Street, which is about half a block away, and is consistent of the kinds of light fixtures that we find in the immediate vicinity, and we are proposing a total of 5 of these on this application. You can see that 2 of them are located here on the left and right, 1 here, and the last 2 are down the street, and you can see that on the architectural elevation. The casement windows being proposed are wood inside and out, again matching what was done in the rear facade. We're proposing to stain those black as they were done in the back, which reveals some of the texture of the wood grain. The trim is a reclaimed timber, much of which was salvaged from the interior renovation of the space, and is used both on the rear facade and then throughout the interior of the restaurant that exists there currently. We're proposing a navy awning, which again matches the navy umbrellas that are being used in the existing garden of the restaurant. And then the wood paneling is proposed as a black painted wood paneling, and then a white stain on the interior wood of all of the casement windows. The brick bulkheads, we're proposing a reclaimed brick masonry, which generally matches the size, scale, and character of what is left of the historic brick fabric on the building interior. For the awning arms, we're proposing a hinged black and steel awning, which is similar to several of the other awnings that you see along the Hudson Street corridor. Again, as a material reference precedent, these are photos of the existing renovated rear facade. So again, this work was done about 4 years ago at staff level, with staff level approval, and you can see that the nature of the materials is consistent with what's being proposed for the front. In terms of neighborhood precedent, we've included 2 photos. Here, one at 531 Hudson Street, showing similar materials used on the storefront of the Swine restaurant. And then we've included 438 Hudson Street, which is Henrietta Hudson. It's directly across the street from the subject property, showing brick bulkheads. These are actually vented on that application. But again, the size and scale is consistent with what's being proposed. Again, the recessed entries, again, typical to what we see in the neighborhood. These are 2 examples of other storefronts on Hudson Street that utilize casement windows as are being proposed in our application. And these are 2 examples, again, within half a block on Morton Street, showing casement windows here in a residential application. So what we're trying to do in our proposal is appeal to both the residential character on Morton Street and also the commercial character on Hudson Street.
Okay. Yes, questions?
Two questions.
Yes.
When you've got such a compelling photograph of 1940, which was a changed condition, of course, from a federal-style building, but somehow they got it right here with how they changed it. And I'm just questioning your casement windows, A, and B, the brick bulkhead. Why are those two elements appropriate?
Well, speaking first to the brick bulkhead, again, it is difficult to tell with certainty in the 1940s photo, but it does appear that there is, if we go back to that, you can't really see in the slide here, but looking closely at the blow-up on the right, it appears that there are bars in the vent of the bulkhead. Typically, based on what I've been able to see in the neighborhood, when you have the bars in front of a vented window like that, I'm seeing that typically occur in a brick bulkhead as opposed to wood. So that seemed to suggest that there was a brick bulkhead there previously. In terms of the casement windows, the entire reason why we put forth this application for my client, who is the restaurant, was the request to install the casement windows. And the restaurant felt that that was an important way to connect to the street life and the passerbys that occupy the neighborhood. In consideration of that and recognizing that it is different than what the 1940 tax photo shows, I did an extensive survey of the neighborhood and located approximately 15 commercial storefronts on the Hudson Street corridor that also have casement windows. I can provide those addresses if helpful.
No,
Okay.
Right.
And similarly,
Yes.
numerous locations on Bleecker Street and 7th Avenue. In total, well over 50 comparable
It's
applications.
very common.
Sure.
Diana, and then...
Yeah, I have the same comment about the brick bulkhead, that, you know, it would seem to me maybe the wood bulkhead might be more appropriate regardless of, you know, whether it is or there was or was not the...
Since there's no brick above anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And on the other side, on the side elevation, I guess there's those punches, those punch stars. There's some kind of strange thing that was there already, right?
Yeah,
Just curious about
the masonry stars were installed for structural reasons a number of years ago
interesting.
Yeah,
to
yeah.
stabilize the facade. So
Yeah,
we're just
it
leaving
just
those
looks
as is.
strange now, but there's not much that can be done about that.
Roberta?
Just a couple of questions about material. First of all, are the wood piers, I mean, they're wood piers, right? They're not metal, there are no existing piers there that you're not uncovering
That's correct.
any structural elements, right?
That's correct.
So this is then
This is a restaurant.
simulated in wood, or
That-
is it metal, or?
There is a structural steel frame that will be installed behind the storefront. Right now, there is an I-beam that's functioning as the lintel over the top of the opening. And the structural engineers recommended that steel columns be installed between the underside of the I-beam and a concrete bond beam, which will be below grade in order to reinforce the facade. All that steel will be concealed behind the wood paneling and trim that you see here in the rendering.
So these piers are wood?
Correct.
Wooden, and
Correct. The one exception is the pier on the right, which retains the stucco.
which one? There's that one? which
Yeah,
is-
beyond the wood
which is-
paneling.
okay, so-
Correct. Yeah.
And so now what is the material in the middle where you have the little recesses down at the bulkhead in the brick, right?
We're proposing the reclaimed wood trim that you see in the previous.
Oh, you want to put it in, it's not that you're
It's-
gonna add that as
It's not
accent.
existing. Everything that is there currently as infill,
Uh-huh.
we are proposing to
Okay.
remove.
Yeah.
Okay. And one last, so what is that material? Go back to your drawing. So there's black painted wood in the center, and so on either side, is that wood too? And what is that, if that is?
Correct.
what's the color of-
There's the black painted wood, and then what we have is a series of trim pieces. They measure about
So this is wood, not painted?
That's correct.
Reclaimed, you're saying this
reclaimed
is
stained
reclaimed.
wood, yes.
I'm assuming this is is a restaurant, basically? Because that's why you
That-
want the casements for the
that's
ventilation,
correct.
because otherwise you would have a,
Yes, there's an
But if it's a
existing
storefront
restaurant.
for something else, you'd want
Yeah,
it closed.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's a
Correct.
restaurant. Okay.
And that restaurant has a sidewalk cafe application. So
Yeah.
there's the purpose of connecting the interior and exterior
Right, and
space.
let me just clarify, the sidewalk application is not before us, and that goes
Correct.
through various other agencies for their approval.
Of course.
Okay, are there any other questions right now? All right, we'll take testimony. Robert Eli?
Good morning, my name is Bob Ely, and I live 2 doors down from this particular storefront at 451 Hudson Street. I've been there 20-plus years. People in my building who I represent today, 30-plus years. My neighbor, Mary Kina, who lives right next door, 449, is also here. And the reasons that we are here are we're opposed to the changes at this particular location, storefront infill, most specifically dealing with the casement windows. And what they're asking for isn't just casement windows. They're asking for operable casement windows. And when they showed you photographs of the rear, you notice that there are operable French-type windows. And I think Mr. Balboni said that it was done administratively, or the approval process was done administratively. It was not done with any input from the neighbors, and it certainly wasn't done with the Community Board 2's input. And that has, those operable windows in the rear yard have been a significant impact on our neighborhood. Let me give you a little history of this location. And I have photographs a little bit later than the tax photograph that show, it was Duffy and Lynch, it was an insurance, real estate storefront. And it was like that for 50, 60 years. And sometime in 2008, Mr. Duffy passed away. And his 2 daughters ended up with the property. They don't live anywhere in our neighborhood. They don't come into our neighborhood, and what they do is they rent, and they created a restaurant in about 2009. So there's been a significant impact with a new restaurant on the back side and on the front side of our particular neighborhood. Mr. Balboni, who is presenting today, is actually an owner of the restaurant. He didn't say that to you, but he and his brother and 2 other colleagues are owners of the restaurant. Now, just in terms of the aesthetics of the casement windows, there's absolutely no reason to have them be operable for any reason, okay, other than to cause an impact on the neighborhood. And so the idea of matching the rear facade and the operability of the windows in the rear facade is really a farce, as far as I'm concerned. What we really need is we need the windows to remain shut and have no operation. Mr. Balboni indicated that casement windows exist throughout the storefronts on Hudson Street. There are no operable windows on any casement or non-casement storefront on Hudson Street. I personally walked up and down. I have photographs, I can show them to you, but that's the reality of it. There is no operable windows on Hudson Street.
I'm sorry, your time is up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mary Kina?
Red door.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Sorry. The red door immediately opposite
painted or
the restaurant is my house. And my concern is that there's going to be a tremendous amount of noise, coming through those windows and disturbing the peace and quiet of my home. And I think that that's, an issue. I am concerned. We do have a lot of noise. We have had noise in the back since the restaurant opened. It was never a restaurant. It was an insurance company. And, it's not like Bleecker Street. It's not like, all of the other streets. This is a big change in our neighborhood, and I don't think it's a good one.
Thank you. Are there any more speakers? All right, Community Board 2 sent in their recommendation. They have asked us to deny the operable casement windows and also the reclaimed wood treatment that is being proposed here. Are there any more speakers? All right, would you like to respond to some of the, yes, okay.
I don't fully understand the comments made by Mr. Ely that there are no operable casement windows on Hudson Street. In the very application before you and on the slide, we can see 2 such examples, and I can provide addresses of another 13 locations on Hudson Street. That aside, our intent here is to do a proposal that is consistent with the fabric of the Greenwich Village neighborhood. On the Hudson Street corridor, this type of casement window application is very prevalent, specifically for restaurants, or where being used for restaurants. So our position is that what we're proposing here is absolutely in keeping with the existing context of the Hudson Street corridor, and very much in keeping with the street life and character and scale of the Greenwich Village Historic District.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? All right, then we can close the hearing. Okay. I walk along Hudson Street, I don't know how many times in a week. It's my neighborhood. It's where my dog likes to walk. And I've often seen this corner at Morton and Hudson and shuddered at its current state. So it is, I think anything that happens here would be an improvement that you have right now. I just want to make a comment where we've heard testimony today about any kind of nuisance with the type of use that is being proposed over there. And its impacts, and I think the Commission understands that some of these issues are really not within our jurisdiction, and we will speak to the appropriateness of these changes versus whether it's appropriate to have a restaurant use in here. So I just want to clarify that from that, the Sidewalk Cafe and its use as a restaurant is regulated by the Buildings Department and Consumer Affairs, so it's not really our area. Having said that, I think this is an improvement, and I think actually on Hudson Street you see quite a wide variety of different storefronts, and there are storefronts that have operable windows, some do not. A lot of them are actually restaurants. In reality, Hudson has a lot of restaurant uses. And a lot of them are cafes as well, but as a part of that, you do see operable windows. They have a variety of material as well. And in the best situation, one would like them to go back to their historic storefront treatment. But just that the fact that they haven't done that, I don't think makes it inappropriate. I think some of the issues raised about the base, whether it should be brick or some other material, I think is something that can easily be resolved. But I think the thrust of this application, at least I would say, is appropriate. Are there concerns on this in terms, I know some of the commissioners noted about the material at the base and whether there's a material that's more in keeping with the rest of the facade?
I would
Yes.
just suggest that on that issue, they work carefully with staff.
Oh, that's fine. You can ask.
Whether it should be wood or metal or brick, I'm happy ceding that to staff.
And while the staff's doing that, if they could look also the enframement, which is this unpainted wood, whether it should perhaps
Right, that's
also
sort
be
of-
painted just to be appropriate.
Okay, I think that seems fine. We can ask staff to look at that. Michael, do you want to say anything?
I mean, someone should speak for the vinyl siding. I mean, it's such an ugly, ugly siding. It's kind of a shame to lose such an, it's like nice to have some ugly buildings occasionally, you know? I'm sad about it. That's what I mean. That's what I'm sad about. I mean, it's kind of nice to have ugly buildings every once in a while. Clearly, this is appropriate.
Okay, all right. If there are no other issues, I think we can read the resolution. Would you like to do that, please?
In the matter of 447 Hudson Street in the Greenwich Village Historic District, an application is to install storefront infill. I recommend approval, noting that the removal of the existing storefront infill will not eliminate any significant historic fabric. That the proposed storefront infill featuring black stained wood, multi-light casement windows and transoms set above a brick bulkhead, black painted wood piers, a black painted wood cornice, and recessed entry will be in keeping with the configuration materials of storefronts historically found on buildings of this age and style. That the incorporation of reclaimed wood framing within the storefront assembly will be harmonious with the building and consistent with the variety of storefronts along the commercial thoroughfare of Hudson Street and within the historic district. That the proposed multi-light casement windows at the Morton Street facade will be in keeping with the design of the proposed storefront infill and will not call undue attention to itself. That the design and placement of the retractable awnings feature blackened steel hardware and navy canvas with white stripes will be consistent with the awnings historically used on buildings of this age and style and will be located to closely align with the storefront and associated window openings. That the cumulative amount of lighting consisting of surface-mounted light fixtures located at storefront piers and at the rear garden wall entry will not overwhelm the building or this streetscape. That the proposed louver set within the North Masonry Pier on Hudson Street will align with the proposed sign band and will be finished to match the existing stucco color and therefore will not call undue attention to itself, and that the proposed work will enhance the special architectural and historic character of the Greenwich Village Historic District.
And you want to just recommend that staff?
And the staff, sorry, and the applicant will work with staff to determine the final appropriate material of the bulkhead and the color, right, and paint.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This application's been approved.